and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this episode 3955 AM. Today's date is July 23rd, 2026. The title of the episode is Carney is the point person for the central bank. Trump said the quiet part out loud. Are you feeling good about your financial future? Because when I look back at the last few years, all I see are higher prices, everyday necessities out of reach. And if your savings are sitting in cash, you're feeling every bit of it. You know who's keeping up? Gold investors. Here's the thing. Gold is priced in dollars. When the dollar's values go down, like right now, it takes more dollars to buy the same amount of gold. That's why gold prices usually increase during inflationary times. That price increase helps protect your buying power. So why are you sitting in cash? We've entered the asset economy. Countries, investors, everyday Americans, they all protect their wealth with assets, not dollars. If you're ready to shift your wealth away from the dollar like nations around the world are doing right now, visit X22Gold.com. Noble Gold simplifies the process and makes it easier for you to protect your financial future. Look, only you can decide how to protect your wealth, so gather the facts and then make the best decision for you. You could start by visiting X22Gold.com. That is X22Gold.com. And here's the best part. America's turning 250, and that's worth celebrating. So Noble Gold is sending a beautiful 10-ounce silver bar stamped with the American map and 250 years of independence to every new qualified account. It's yours free. Just mention my name when you open one, because America only turns 250 once. And don't forget to click the link in the description. And remember, past performance may not be indicative of future results. Investing in precious metals involves risk. Consult your financial advisor before making investment decisions. Let's get right into the economic collapse financial news. Now, the deep state, the corrupt politicians, the private West Central Bank, the World Economic Forum. We can see at this point that Trump is battling the central bankers. And if you really don't see it, well, all you got to do is look at Canada. When Trudeau was in office, they knew that they needed someone that could actually go up against Trump. At least that's what they thought. So they brought in a central banker, Mark Carney. And his job is to continually push back on Trump, figure out ways to counter what President Trump is trying to do. Now, it's not just for Canada, it's for the entire central bank establishment. That's why he's been put into place. And you can see that Trump knows this. He knows what he's going up against. He's going up against the central bankers in Canada. He's going up against the central bankers in Iran. Because remember, this is the system that they created. They don't want to give it up. They're going to fight back to the very, very end. Do they use proxy forces to fight their battles? Absolutely. That is what you're witnessing right now. This is a battle to see who is going to create the currency worldwide. Right now, the central bankers have that control. Soon, what's going to happen is that control is going to be stripped from them. And of course, the people of this country will create their own currency. We're not going to loan it to ourselves. We're not going to create it out of thin air. We're going to use the currency that is being brought in via the tariffs. It's going to be backed up by stablecoins. It's going to be backed up by gold. This is what Trump is doing right now. And this is what the central bankers have taken from us a long time ago. Now, you have to remember the central bankers, they've created private West central banks in almost every single country. They invaded every single country, and they took control of their financial institutions, the financial situation, and everything else. This is what Trump is stripping away. And all you got to do is look at Canada and compare it to Mexico. Remember, they both are part of the USMCA. And if you look at Mexico, Mexico's doing a lot better than Canada. Ask yourself a simple question. Why? Eric Thor put this out and said, has anyone called Mexico for advice yet? I compiled this data set outlining the terms of trade between U.S., Canada, and U.S.-Mexico relationship over the last 4 years. A common line of defense among Carney supporters are cliche tropes like, do you want him to bend over to Trump? Or you have to stand up to a bully, as if international trade is settled in the schoolyard at recess. Well, if taking the knee results in growing your country's trade surplus 41% over a 4-year period, it's worth considering. Mexico has taken over for Canada as the number one U.S. trading partner. Hasn't Claudia Sheinbaum, who's been in office for 6 months, longer than Carney, actually won for her citizens? How has Mexico improved their terms of trade with America while Canada has shown a decline over the same period and a steep drop off this last year? Because Canada, the individual that was put into place, the central banker, was to fight the battle of the central bankers, masking himself as the leader of Canada. That is what you're witnessing. Dominic Sinelli put this out and says, Susan Kokinda just laid it out, and Trump's tariffs are not the real story. Mark Carney is not fighting for Canada. He is the globalist man inside Ottawa, turning our government into their command post against Trump and against Canadians. Carney installed an American and Clinton operative as CEO and the PMO to run daily operations. His trade minister also heads King Charles Privy Council. He picked a UN-linked governors general, and all of this is not normal staffing. This is a real takeover. While Canadians face higher costs and pressure on jobs and energy, Carney pushes a new rule-based order to sideline America, cozy up to the global institutions, and lock in climate agendas that hurt our industries. Canada is being used as the beachhead for their empire rebuild, not as a sovereign nation putting its own people first. This is the plan she exposed. Betrayal dressed up as leadership. Alberta, BC, Ontario, every province, pay attention because your prosperity and freedom are on the line. So basically, they put Carney into place because, again, Trudeau, he couldn't handle anything. He's a moron. And Klaus Schwab basically instructed Trudeau in what to say and what to do. But when it comes to Trump, Trudeau would never be able to go up against him. So they had to bring in a central banker, and that was Carney. Now you're watching the central bankers fight against Trump and the people of this country. And you're going to see other central bankers push back. Because once again, you have to remember, the central bankers, they just don't come out of the shadows. They don't have armies. They don't have anything like this. They control other countries. How do they control countries? Well, they take over their creation of currency. They put them into debt. And they infiltrate the entire country. And then they have their forces. Just like here in the United States, they used to have the military until Trump took the military away from them. And this is a major, major problem for them right now because, again, Trump now is using tariffs against them. And tariffs are a very, very powerful weapon against the central bank system. You have to remember, the central bank system is a debt-based system. You have to borrow from them. Then you have to pay them back with interest. A tariff system is an income system. You don't have to take anything from the people. You don't have to pay anything back. You can use that currency and it doesn't cause inflation. Hey, have you been asking this question lately? Should I add crypto to my investment strategy? You've asked yourself that. Everyone has. But here's what most people don't know. You can invest in crypto using your retirement funds. It's called a crypto IRA. Same tax advantage as the IRA you already have. But instead of the usual stocks and bonds, part of your nest egg goes into Bitcoin, one of the strongest performing assets of the decade. That's real diversification and real growth potential to actually hit your retirement goals. My friends at My Digital Money make it simple and secure. Roll over an existing IRA or 401k in minutes. Your crypto sits in offline cold storage with a regulated U.S. custodian, and real support teams picks up the phone. Visit mydigitalmoney.com and enter promo code X22. You may qualify for up to $200 based on your investment amount. mydigitalmoney.com, crypto investing simplified. That system that Trump is building right now is about 1,000 times better and stronger than a central bank system. The central bankers know this. They know once the people catch on, once the people see what a tariff system does, it's game over for them. This is why they're going to fight to the very, very end, because they don't want to give up control. They don't want to give up the creation of currency. They don't want to give up having countries in debt. They don't want to give any of this up. And Trump actually said the quiet part out loud, which we'll be getting into in just a second. But you can see the deep state players, the fake polls, they're trying to convince everyone that Republicans have lost the issue on the economy. And they're trying to convince everyone that Democrats are leading by 9 points. And this is the party's best showing since 2006. And this is because fuel prices are going up. But Trump showed the American people, once again, that fuel prices can go up and down very easily. He can bring fuel prices way, way down. And again, you could see the deep state players, the fake polls and the fake news, they fell for this once again. They believe that this is going to stay the way it is all the way up to the midterms. They believe that people are going to be very upset about the fuel prices and inflation. But what's going to happen this time around, and it's going to be a lot better than last time around, you're going to see fuel prices drop like we've never seen before. Remember, we never really needed Strait of Hormuz. We don't need the oil from Iran. Trump makes that perfectly clear. He even said it when he was out in Georgia. Eric Doherty put this out and said, President Trump just said that millions of barrels of oil right now are heading to Texas and Louisiana as Iran wreaks havoc in the Strait of Hormuz. We don't need the Strait of Hormuz. Millions of barrels of oil is going to Houston and Louisiana. Also, Venezuela doing better than they've ever done before, too. The big oil companies are going in and they're signing up. If you combine us and Venezuela, we have about 62% of the world's oil market. We don't need the straits. We don't need anything. But we do it because we have to, because we cannot let Iran have a nuclear weapon. Let me translate that for you. Yes, we can't allow them to have a nuclear weapon because if they have a nuclear weapon, they'll control the prices of oil forever. This feeds into the central bank system. When you remove the power of Iran and you decentralize the oil in Iran, and there's no more threats, there's no way to control it, oil prices come way, way down. That's all it is. Do we really need them? No. He needs to remove the fear factor. He needs to remove what they can do on the world stage. This is what the central bankers set up. This is what they set up in the late 60s going into the 70s when we came off the gold standard and we went onto the petrodollar system. This is what he's removing right now. And once that is removed, what you're going to see is you're going to see the oil prices drop to levels that have never seen before, actually probably in most of the people's lifetimes. Yeah, if you go back to the 60s and you go back to the 50s, yeah, you're going to see oil prices, at 70 cents, 60 cents, 50 cents, 40 cents, so forth and so on. But again, people today in today's world have never, ever seen that. And I do believe once everything's all said and done, the central bank is removed, we're going to see the prices, which means the inflation, which means the devaluation of the currency has disappeared. How do you make it disappear? You got to return the money back to the central bank system. You got to take the money out of the circulation and give it back to the central bank system. That's called paying off the debt. Then all of a sudden you see the inflation disappear. Then when you fully go on to a tariff system, all of a sudden you realize, wait a minute, there's no inflation. The currency is not losing value. This is very, very interesting. The people of this country can keep their buying power. Fuel prices are very, very, very low. We don't have to pay taxes. That's what people are going to experience. And every step of the way, we're in a transition period. That's what we're experiencing right now. This is not business as usual, economics 101 as usual. This is about changing the entire system. And that's what Trump is doing right now. He's changing the entire system. And when you look at the initial jobless claims right now, they have collapsed to the lowest since 1969. And wait until the factories start to come online. This is going to be absolutely amazing in the end. And like we said from the beginning, Trump pretty much said the quiet part out loud. Remember, the central bank system is based on debt. So the only way to keep everything running is to continually borrow from a loan shark. That's pretty much what it is. Let's just call it for what it is. It's a loan sharking system. And the only way to keep the bloated government operational, and this is what the central bankers made you believe, was to get the money from the Federal Reserve. Period. The end. That's it. They never wanted you to know that there was another way to do it. They never wanted you to know that the United States operated perfectly well and actually a lot better than ever before with the central bank system, where we used the tariff system. We were very rich. We had hardly any debt if we had to go to a loaning center to get funds. So pretty much we didn't need any of that. We had very low debt. People had their buying power. People didn't have to give up their hard-earned money when they worked for it. And most of the taxes that you see today didn't even exist. The only reason we have all this is because when you loan people or the government money, which goes to the people, you need to collect on every single level. The towns have to collect. The cities have to collect. Everyone has to collect. And where do they get it from? They're not going to get it from the outside. They're going to get it from the inside. This is how you control a nation. This is what they've been doing. Why do you think Trump has set up the Trump accounts for the young children? Because he doesn't want the young children to be in debt. Why would they be in debt? Think about it for a second. Nick Sorter says, President Trump celebrates 6 million Trump accounts open so far and slams the Democrats for trying to block it. Trump said, Washington politicians gave our children absolutely nothing, and this is in all caps, by the way, nothing but debt. But with Trump accounts, We're finally seeing and ensuring that every young American gets a great start in life and a really fair shot at the American dream, which is what we all want. You think that was easy to get from the Democrats? Not easy. Actually, they didn't vote for it. They didn't. I don't think we got one vote. We got a unanimous Republican vote. Why would the Democrats vote against it? Well, first of all, it's Trump. Second of all, they protect the Federal Reserve. Remember, this goes up against the Federal Reserve system. Debt. The central bank system puts this country in debt, puts almost every single country into debt so they can control the country. And when the country's in debt and you're able to just borrow and borrow and borrow and nobody's accountable for paying this debt back except for the hardworking people of the country, you create corruption. And the corruption then brings in people that are going to protect the loan sharking system. That is what we're seeing today. And Trump is letting everyone know that our children don't need to be in debt. Remember, slowly but surely, what is he doing? He's reversing what the central bank has done. He's reversing them moving all manufacturers out of this country. He's reversing the taxes. Right now, he started with no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, no tax on overtime. Now he's giving the young children the ability to invest money to make sure that they're not in debt. Next, you're going to see him move to get rid of other taxes. Now, remember, he can't do all this at once because, again, you have to transition from one system to another. And I think once he gets the power of the House and Senate, I do believe the power of the House and Senate can then vote on the tariff system and say, let's use that money to fund part of the government. Let's use that money to absorb some of the income tax that the people have to pay. Then Trump, what can he do? He can say, okay, those individuals, and I'm just going to make up a number, those individuals making, $70,000 or less or whatever it is, you do not have to pay income tax right now. Now think about what Trump is doing. When the central bank came into existence, they went to the very, very wealthy. The wealthy must pay for everything. Isn't that what they're doing now in New York? And all the communists are saying that, hey, the rich should pay more. That's the same exact playbook, same strategy, same narrative that they've been using for a very long time. So he's going to go to the poor, middle class, maybe the upper middle class, but let's just say the middle class right now, and he's going to give the power back to them. Remember, those were the last people that got it taken away. Now he's going to go to them first and say, you don't have to pay income tax. How much better is it going to be for families? They're going to get $5,000, $8,000, $10,000, $20,000 back. They don't have to pay that money. Are their lives going to be a lot easier? Absolutely. Think about when fuel prices come down, interest rates come down. Yes, they're going to feel pretty darn good. And people are going to say, wow, the tariff system that Trump implemented is able to take care of this? Why didn't we do this a long time ago? And as time goes on, as he keeps transitioning everything, moving us off the central bank system, moving us onto the tariff system, people are going to recognize that we really never needed the central bank system. Why do we need this for? Because, let's see, Congress, they just create these bills saying we need $1 trillion. Most of it goes to waste. It's laundered through the system to keep their criminal syndicate operational. Why did we ever have that before? Well, we never, ever needed it. And it looks like Trump and team, they're planning to shut all this down. And as we're seeing right now, he's battling the deep state players, the central bankers. That's going to be the biggest battle. And we're seeing it happen in real time. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot. Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 3955 BN. Today's date is July 23rd, 2026, and the title of the episode is Trump Orders CENTCOM to Open the Gates of Hell. Trump just sent the signal. Panic in D.C. This is the Ghost Phone. Have you ever just talked about a new truck or a new pair of shoes and then suddenly your feed is full of ads for exactly that? It feels like your phone is listening. Here's the truth. It doesn't even need to. Your smartphone is already spying on everything you do. Your phone isn't just a device you use. It's a device that reports on you. Where you sleep, where you pray, where your kids go to school, what pharmacy you walk into, and what you search at 2 a.m. when you think you're in incognito mode. Here's the thing about incognito. It only hides your history on your physical phone. Your internet service provider, all the sites you visit, and search engines still see and upload your activity to their servers. None of that stays with you. It gets bundled and sold like cattle to advertisers, data brokers, and even bad actors. If someone has $40, they can access you and your family's personal information. That's why I partnered with ZeroGhost.com, specifically their Ghost Phone. Their Ghost Phones run Graphene OS, the same operating system Edward Snowden has publicly endorsed, the guy who exposed mass surveillance. They take that operating system, install it, harden it, and ship you a phone that's ready to go out of the box. No Google service baked in. Nothing quietly phoning home to Google in the background. And you're not giving up much. Calls, text, camera, pretty much every app you already use still works like a regular phone. The difference is the operating system isn't built to profit off your location. Wanting privacy doesn't make you paranoid or sketchy. It makes you smart. That's why we lock our doors and close our blinds at night. Get a device that does the same for your digital life and ditch the one that acts like a tracking device. Go to zeroghost.com/X22 and use code X22 for $50 off at checkout, or click the link in the description. Let's get into the economic collapse, political and geopolitical news. Now, the deep state, corrupt politicians, big tech fake news, the puppet masters, you can see that the deep state players, they are now panicking. First of all, Trump just sent the signal. He's now speaking about Thune. It looks like it's time. It looks like it's time now to push the Save America Act. Now, I do believe it can't look that easy, because you have to remember the deep state players, the Ds, they're already now coordinating. They're already planning for the midterms. They're already trying to figure out what Trump is trying to do. And I do believe now that Trump is now sending the signal that it's almost time for the Senate to pass the Save America Act. Yes. Is he throwing up all the different bills with the Save America Act connected to it? Absolutely. And I do believe this is how it's all going to be done at the right moment, at the right time. And I do believe if, let's say, it doesn't get passed, yes, we'll still have an executive order. But I think he wants this in law, then an executive order, because he wants to make it very, very difficult for the deep state players. You know they're going to sue. You know they're going to try to get injunctions. You know they're going to try to do all these things. But I think Trump waited until this moment. I mean, he could have done this going all the way back to January. He could have done this in 2025. Because the House passed it multiple times. But he waited for right now. Think where we are. They're going on recess very soon. We're in July. They come back in September. So let's see how this all plays out. This is going to be very, very interesting. And you can see that Trump now, he is making the Ds and the deep state players and the central bankers panic like we've never seen before. Why? Because they know he's very, very close in removing the power structure in Iran. And this, I do believe, has to do with oil, decentralizing the oil. He's letting everyone know that we don't need Iran. But the problem is Iran, the way the system is set up, it sets the price around the world. And think about what has happened here. And this is how you know Iran is very, very weak at this point. In the beginning of the first phase of the excursion, oil went up to 100, 105, 110 very, very quickly. This time around, what did Iran need? What did the deep state players need? What did the central bankers need to make the oil prices go up? They needed the Houthis to block the Red Sea. They needed Zelensky to hit the refineries in Russia and shut down the fuel in the Black Sea. They needed all of that just to get the price up to $90 a barrel. Without that, oil really wouldn't have moved that much, which means Trump has decentralized it pretty darn good. Now, think about what's going to happen when Iran folds, because that shows you they're weak. That shows their plan wasn't working. That shows you that they're having a difficult time. So they had to call on their other terrorists, and the deep state players had to get involved to assist Iran in doing all of this. That should tell you everything you need to know, because you have to remember, without removing the structure that's in place that the central bankers put into place a long time ago, going all the way back to the late 60s, going into the 70s, Without doing that, well, then you can't have manufacturing. You can't make America grow the way you want it to grow. You can't bring America into the full golden age. You can't remove the central bank system. Remember, they created the system the way it is today to stop anyone that goes against it. This is why, and we mentioned this in the financial report, this is why Carney was put into place instead of Trudeau's, because he's not working for Canada. He's battling Trump on the central bank level. That is what he's doing. And the central bankers, the deep state players know once Trump decimates Iran and they fold, they are screwed big time. And this is why Trump needed to be out there. Remember, this is not economics 101. This is not just the normal 4-year election. Hey, let's just do a couple things to make everyone feel a little better. This is for the long haul. This is reversing everything that they put into place. This is about returning the power to the people, returning the economic structure back to the people, returning it to the country, taking control of the oil prices. Remember, Trump has let us know we don't need the strait. Well, if we don't need the strait, why do we have to control the strait? Why do we have to remove the forces from the strait? Well, first of all, that's where Iran gets its money. But again, if we don't need the strait and we have, 62% of the oil, especially with Venezuela, that's why he released Venezuela and allowed the oil to flow. What's controlling the prices? If we have 62% of the oil, we're independent, we're getting oil from Venezuela. Why would oil prices go up in the United States? Does that make any sense to you? It makes no sense whatsoever unless there's control mechanisms in place that the central bankers put into place to control the oil. That is what they have done. They linked it together and they stopped countries from producing oil. It's almost like they fix prices. It's almost like it's a monopoly on oil. It's almost like the meat packers or the egg producers where they control the prices. It's the same exact thing. That's what they put into place. Trump now is dismantling all of this, and he ordered CENTCOM to open the gates of hell because he's going to break the will of the terrorist leaders. That is what he's doing because, again, they've lost the Strait of Hormuz. You might not think so, because if they were truly in control of the Strait of Hormuz, there wouldn't be ships going in and out. Just because you don't see it on trackers doesn't mean they're not going in and out. They turn off their GPS. Actually, CENTCOM has repeatedly said, nope, the Strait of Hormuz is open. Ships are going in and out. They have the control. And think about how desperate Iran is. They have told their terrorist organization to fire upon ships that are carrying cargo and oil. These aren't military ships. These are terrorists. That's what you're witnessing right now. And is this going to work? Absolutely not. How do you know DC is panicking? Because they went ahead and they voted on a War Powers Act to try to stop Trump again. Now, this is absolutely meaningless. It holds no weight. It's not binding. The president doesn't have to even follow or even pay attention to it. It's all BS, just like the last time. Nothing has changed. This is how desperate they are. They pass this ridiculous resolution that is meaningless because they can't control any of this. They're not in power. They don't have the power, and they're reaching right now. This is how desperate they are. And Trump now, he's going to break the terrorist organization once and for all. And you could see how this is all playing out right now. They're losing control. They are leaning on other terrorist organizations, leaning on Ukraine to help them out. The deep state players are desperate right now, and they're all going to lose. Trump knows this. He looks pretty comfortable, doesn't he? Because he knows where all of this is going to end up. We'll be talking a little bit more about this a little bit later. But first, let's talk about what's happening out in California. We mentioned that we might see forest fires once again. And Gavin Newsom is trying to convince everyone before they light the fires that when it comes to fire management, California is the model for the globe. So if you want neighborhoods burnt down, if you want fires to rage uncontrollably, if you want to keep the water from the firefighters, just follow California. Really, what he's really saying is, listen, we figure this out. We light the fires, they can't fight them, and we get federal funds. That's what we do. But the people aren't having it. Jack says, we are a model for the globe on fire management. The Palisades, all demolished, burnt down. That should tell you everything you need to know. And this type of narrative might have worked in the past, but again, they don't control the information anymore. So when people hear this, they fight back, they push back, and everyone can see it. Remember, they lost control of X. They lost control of social media completely because now there's Rumble, now there's Truth. And the fake news can't control the narrative anymore. So every time they put something out, the people are saying, yeah, that doesn't make any sense. There's no way that you're the model. And people are no longer buying anything that they're selling. But you can see how desperate the deep state players are. Trump has shut down the border. No one's coming in. And you could see they're still trying to traffic the people into this country. Is it working? No. But they're trying. Wall Street Apes put this out and said, U.S. Border Patrol has confirmed information the Mexico cartel is using popular ride-sharing apps like Uber and Lyft to move illegals deeper into the United States. They're stating that they're seeing an increase in smugglers and cartels using these rideshare services to move illegal migrants deeper into the U.S. Border Patrol agents in El Paso, Texas say criminal organizations are using legitimate drivers to keep cartel members away from law enforcement. They don't want to lose a gang member. They don't want to lose a cartel member. They don't want to lose a vehicle. They want to be able to use the public. Agents warn drivers who accept these suspicious fares could be detained and even face felony alien smuggling or harboring charges. This is real, and the U.S. Attorney Office says they will not take any excuses from drivers caught transporting illegal migrants. The U.S. Attorney's Office says, quote, we aggressively prosecute all alien smuggling cases and we will use all available evidence to prosecute anyone who participated in moving illegal aliens into the United States. Do it. Doesn't matter if the driver knew or not. They will be prosecuted. This is good news. We need full enforcement against anyone aiding illegals. Absolutely. And you could see that the cartels, the gang members, they're desperate right now because Trump is shutting everything down. And they know if they traffic the people in, well, they're going to be arrested. Now, under the Biden administration, they were getting paid to do all of this, and they were free to do anything that they want. And you can see that everything now has changed. Now, out in Chicago, and Ed Moakness put this out, Chicago Mayor Johnson suggests they will be giving reparations to areas with ICE raids. So let me translate that for you. If you fight ICE to keep the people that broke the law in the city so they can vote, cause chaos, and take the money to live, I'll pay you for it. That's pretty much what he's saying right there. So they're paying people to harbor the criminals that broke the law. Think about that. I mean, this is how desperate they are becoming right now. Unbelievable. Now, the other thing that we could see is that Trump's DOJ, they're going after all the blue states, the sanctuary states, and they're hitting them very, very hard. Election Wizard put this out and said the Trump DOJ has filed 27 lawsuits challenging sanctuary policies that obstruct federal immigration enforcement. In the past 3 months alone, DOJ has sued Connecticut, Maryland, New Jersey, New York, Philadelphia over allegedly unconstitutional limits on ICE. So yeah, they're using the law to go after those states that created sanctuary cities to protect those individuals that broke the law, broke federal law, and they're harboring criminals in these areas. Think about that for a second. And like we said yesterday, the Fifth and Second Circuits handed America major wins. Mike Davis put this out. Left-wing radical judges were overruled. Vermont, Connecticut, New York can no longer release illegal aliens back onto the streets. These sanctuary city governors thought they could nullify federal immigration law. They were wrong. The courts are catching up. The rule of law is coming back. America first is winning. Now, these corrupt judges, they tried to delay everything as best they possibly can because, again, you have to remember the illegals are used for voting. They're used for chaos. They're used to keep the crime going in the cities. They use these illegals to get the money so they can launder more federal funds into these people and take a cut of it to pay for their criminal syndicate. But now you could see their delay tactics are not working. Eventually what's going to happen is they could delay up to a certain point, but the rule of law was going to take over. And that's exactly what we're seeing right now. Brian Cates put this out and said, how many of you fully understand the implications of this? The federal government does know exactly where most of the illegal aliens in the country are currently residing. They've always known. These people are getting the federal benefits. They're all about to be told they are no longer going to be allowed to just roam around inside the country. They are about to be ordered to surrender themselves to authorities at a specific location. The federal benefits being turned off and they're being debanked will provide incentives to show up at the required location and surrender. Assuming several millions don't comply, they're still cut off from federal aid and will have to leave their current location because that's where they're in the federal database. They were getting their bennies there. So no more federal support structure, and they have to find a new place to live. And they have to really hide out this time. A lot of them are going to take the hint and self-deport. So think about what Trump and team are doing right now. He's removing all the illegals without using major resources. By saying that they can't get any funds, by saying that they can't just roam freely, he's putting a lot of pressure on those individuals in this country that might want to come back into this country going to the port of entry, but they came in illegally. So I think Trump has always known where all these people have been because of they've been getting federal funds. And now he's giving them an opportunity. Leave the country, and maybe in the future, you can come back if we want you. And you're going to see self-deportation rates. They're going to climb like we've never seen before because the D's just lost their power. And every step of the way, they're losing. This is why they're so panicked over the midterms. This is why they want to know, is ICE or anyone else going to be at the voting polls during the midterms? This is why we have Schumer. He is working on a doomsday scenario for the midterms. They are panicking like we've never seen before. You have to remember, they've been panicking since Trump came back in office because as soon as he came into office, what did he do? He shut down their entire money-making system. Shut down the 14 computers in the Treasury, shut down USAID, shut down the NGOs, tracking every single payment. Every single person now has to show a receipt. Where's the money going? Who's receiving the money? Where was the money spent? So at the mid-level, Trump is controlling all of this. And what's very interesting is that when you look at Africa, Africa is now darker. There's not as many lights. Awaken Outlaw theorizes and says, turns out that through USAID, American taxpayers were essentially subsidizing the electric bill for the whole of the African continent. Maybe we were, because I wouldn't be surprised if we were. And you can see Trump now is shutting all of this down. And Rubio right now is actually educating the American people on Cuba and what they've been up to and how Obama was working with them and how they're trying to destroy this country through communism and infiltration. MJ Truth Ultra put this out and said, Marco Rubio put out a new report on Cuba and holy crap. Cuba's invisible invasion, 70 years of spies, bombs, and the quiet war to turn America against itself. For nearly 7 decades, Communist Cuba has run a sophisticated, low-profile campaign of espionage, terrorism, support, and ideological subversion aimed at the United States. The document portrays Havana not as a distant failed state, but as the operational heart of a long war designed to weaken America from the inside right next door. Spies in the highest corridors of power. Cuban agents allegedly penetrated the State Department, National Security Council, and Pentagon at the deepest levels, some operating undetected for decades. One agent rose to senior National Security Council roles and even became a U.S. ambassador while secretly working for Havana for roughly 50 years. Victor Manuel Roca. He was recruited by Cuban intelligence in 1973 while living in Chile. Over the following decades, he rose through the U.S. foreign policy ranks, serving as Director of Inter-American Affairs on the National Security Council and later as U.S. Ambassador to Bolivia. He worked for Havana for roughly 50 years. Another was a defense intelligence agency, top Cuba expert named Ana Belén Montes, feeding secrets, including the identities of undercover officers back to the island. A third State Department official named Walter Kendall Myers spied for nearly 30 years and personally met Fidel Castro. The report suggests these high-profile cases are only the visible tip of a much larger network. fueling violence on American streets. Havana is directly named in the report for recruiting, training, and backing radical groups that carried out waves of attacks inside the United States. The report connects Cuba's support to organizations behind roughly 2,500 bombings on the U.S. soil in just 2 years during the early 70s. Because Cuba could never match American military power head-on, it perfected a different approach, using proxies, safe havens for fugitives, and sabotage to wage a war of attrition, turning Americans against their own country. From the early 60s onward, Cuba built a systematic pipeline to recruit and radicalize Americans. It funded early U.S. support groups, hosted thousands of young activists on the island through organized brigades, and staged major international conferences that spread a new brand of revolutionary ideology focused on racial and social grievances. The report claims this infrastructure helped shape generations of activists, influence politicians and universities, and left lasting fingerprints on later movements and campus unrest. The post-Soviet Commander Center, after the Soviet Union collapsed, Cuba's version of communism, less about classic struggle and more about third worldism and identity-based revolt, survived and expanded. The island is described as an ongoing intelligence and influence operation whose real focus remains to disrupt the United States. It currently hosts significant Chinese and Russian listening posts capable of monitoring the southeastern U.S. while continuing to serve as a hub for radical networks across the hemisphere. Taken as a whole, the report presents Cuba as the quiet architect of a multi-generational sting. Spies in Washington, bombs in American cities, activists on campuses, and an ideology designed to turn the United States against itself, all directed from just 90 miles away. Rubio just busted this wide open. The report is huge, and I recommend anyone take some time and read this. So when you start to understand what is going on here, you could see that this country was infiltrated a long time ago. And yes, when Obama came around, he continued this, and he took the plans and everything that they've done, and he accelerated it. When Biden came into office, when they overthrew the United States government and Trump allowed Biden to get in office, he knew that Obama would dictate to Biden in what to do. And sometimes not even to Biden, maybe Obama just did it himself and told people what to do. But he knew, since he was behind the scenes, we have to remember Obama's a snake oil salesman. He doesn't just come out and say things, but if he's going through someone, he's going to get these people to say. If you look at Mamdani, if you look at Biden and his administration and what he did, you could see they just went full speed ahead, and he showed the American people their true agenda. I think Trump was counting on this from the very, very beginning. And now you could see that this country has been infiltrated not just by China, but by other nations. And they were very, very patient over a long period of time. And now you can see the infiltration. It is clear as day right now. All you got to do is look at Code Pink. What country did they go to? They went to Cuba. Isn't that interesting? Were they trained by the Cubans? Most likely, yes. Very, very interesting. But what else did the State Department connect to Cuba? Antifa. Andy No put this out and says, the U.S. State Department has officially connected Antifa's lawyers to decades of Cuban communist influence and terrorism. The National Lawyers Guild is the legal arm of Antifa. Their members are in the legal profession but use unethical practices to subvert the rule of law. So that is very, very interesting. So they got their hands in pretty much everything that we're seeing today. And what do we see? We see the infiltration. And this is what President Trump wanted everyone to see. He wanted everyone to see how they infiltrated this country. Remember, they could never invade this country. So what they did was they infiltrated this country a long time ago. And not just with Cuba and teaching the young to hate America. They did it with the food. They did it with the water supply, adding fluoride. It lowers your IQ. It makes your bones weaker. They did it with vaccines. Think about how many vaccines the American child gets today. And when you start to put all this together, you have a very weak population. And then, of course, when Biden was in office and Obama was behind him, using the puppet strings to control him, what did they do to the military? They were trying to weaken the military. Obama was weakening the military. And they were weakening the country from the inside out because their plan was to have the people hate America, make them very weak, make it so they can't fight back, and eventually they'd be able to invade this country and no one would be able to stop them. That was their plan. And you could see their plan is completely and utterly falling apart. But all you got to do is look at the UK. And what's very interesting is that YouGov put out a poll, and it says only 6% of people in the UK would volunteer to fight for the country in the face of an imminent invasion. Does that sound right to you? Only 6% of the people in the UK would say, you know what, if we're getting invaded, I'm going to fight. They would just lay down and just take it. Does that make any sense? Or are they trying to convince the people, listen, once we push World War III, look, only 6% say they would do anything. They would only volunteer. So the rest are saying no. So follow the majority and don't do anything. So this way, the country loses the war and the country could be taken over. It's starting to seem that way, isn't it? This is what they wanted here in the United States. Now, like we said from the very, very beginning, the U.S. House, they passed the second Iran powers resolution aimed at stopping Trump's war. Now, why would they have to do this again? Think about this for a second. Think about it clearly. This carries no weight whatsoever. It's not a law. Trump doesn't have to sign it. Most presidents just ignore it. They're so desperate. They're so afraid because they know what is happening. Remember, most of these rhinos, the D's and the rest, they were put in a place to protect the central bank system. And they're trying to stop Trump every step of the way. Trump knows this. He knows exactly what they're trying to do. And think about what Iran had to do to make the oil prices jump a little bit. Remember, this is still lower than Biden. It's still lower than Obama. So the Houthis, they called upon their terrorist group where they fund them and everything. And they said, listen, we need you to create fear. We need you to attack oil tankers, maybe Saudi or whatever they are, in the Red Sea. We need the people to be afraid. That's what this is all about. So they're attacking unarmed ships to create the fear to try to drive up the oil price. This is how desperate they are. You see, they thought they'd be able to do it in the beginning with the Strait of Hormuz. Trump showed the world it's not working. This time around, the oil prices didn't move until Ukraine, weeks back, hit a lot of refineries and made it very difficult for Russia to pump the oil into the Black Sea. Now you have the Houthis, they're hitting ships in the Red Sea. You know why? Because Iran doesn't have the ability to do what they did before in the Strait of Hormuz. And they're trying to raise the oil prices to put a lot of pressure on President Trump, trying to put a lot of pressure on the economy and giving the D's a talking point as we move towards the midterms. Is this going to work? Absolutely not. Trump is already letting you know that millions of barrels of oil are coming into this country. And we don't need the strait. The only reason he needs to free the strait and make it open to every single country is to remove what they put into place back in the 60s and 70s. That is what he's doing. And that will then have a domino effect and it will remove OPEC, destroy everything that they put into place, which will make oil very, very cheap. And what's very interesting is the fake news, they came out with an article saying that Russia is now coordinating with Iran and giving them targets to shoot down our planes, our military, our ships, and things like that. Eric Doherty put this out and said, Marco Rubio is just taking no BS from the fake news overseas. The reporter says, did you discuss Russia sharing info with Iran targeting U.S. troops? Rubio, who says they are? Reporter, are they not? Rubio said, who said this? The reporter says, reporting. Rubio said, oh, the media. It must be true. If it's the media, it's a leaker. Let's imagine that were true. I certainly wouldn't discuss it in the press. So why would they bring in Russia? Remember, Russia doesn't have a military pact with Iran. And I do believe Trump is working with Putin. So why would Russia actually do this? Because Russia is slated to get an enormous amount of economic deals. Their oil is going to hit the world market. Why would they do this? It doesn't make any sense. The only thing they're trying to do here is they're trying to push Russia into the war. Why do you think the media came out with it? Because really, in the end, they're going back to their 16-year plan. They want World War III. That's what they're trying to do. So they're liars, just like the IRGC are liars. U.S. Central Command put this out and said, today, Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy claimed that it controls exit and entry to the Strait of Hormuz, suggesting that international mariners can only use routes the IRGC prefers. This is false. Iran does not control the Strait of Hormuz. The international waterway remains open for transit regardless of IRGC threats and attacks. Commercial vessels continue to use the strait with U.S. military support. Since early May, American forces have helped more than 900 ships transit the strait. So the IRGC, they have lost all control of the Strait of Hormuz. From the very, very beginning, they really didn't have control. Trump actually controlled who went in, who went out. And Trump was able to navigate the Strait of Hormuz with absolutely no problem. And as of right now, you can see that they are now desperate because what is Trump doing? He's hitting their infrastructure. He's hitting their drone manufacturing. He's hitting their aircraft hangars. They're hitting their maritime capabilities. They're hitting the Iranian operations centers. They're hitting all of this. Iran is struggling. Iran is in trouble. And think about what the U.S. just did out in the Iran-Iraq border. They hit a certain area called Shalamche. Joe Trusman put this out and said, I'm observing reports of U.S. strikes at the Shalamche border crossing between Iraq and Iran. It is significant because the crossing is a key Iran-Iraq transit route. If confirmed, the strike could disrupt personnel movements and logistics used by Iran linked across Iraq and beyond. So this is how they move a lot of weapons. This is how they move a lot of troops and things through this area. Now, if the U.S. was most likely, they did bomb this area, they just shut that all down. Very, very interesting. And Trump, he sent a very stern warning to the Houthis and to the IRGC because Trump is going to hit both. You want to play games? I don't play games. I just decimate you. He said the following. A year ago, the United States of America attacked very powerfully the Houthis for their interference with commerce and trade by shooting at ships. Since that time and during our conflict with Iran, they have acted very responsibly. Unfortunately, now they're starting up again, shooting at 2 Saudi Arabian ships last night. Please let this truth serve to represent that if they do this again, the U.S. will hold Iran responsible, in that the Houthis are a surrogate and a proxy of Iran, and a major military punishment will be inflicted upon Iran and, of course, the Houthis themselves, who I am very disappointed with in that they have, until now, acted very professionally and smart. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President DJT. So let's see how desperate they are. Let's see if the IRGC still has as much control over their proxy terrorist group as they did before, because they've been watching what has been happening to Iran. They understand that the U.S. has the ability to strike them and destroy them just like that. And we'll have to see how this all plays out. But Trump, he is now accelerating the plan in Iran. He is now going to be hitting Iran with everything because he's bending their will. Remember, when you cut them off financially, when you cut them off from the ability to control the Strait of Hormuz, when you cut off their oil, when you cut off everything, the people that need the money to pay everyone else, well, that's how you bend their will. You go to the money people. And that's what Trump is doing, because none of these people are going to do this without getting paid. None of these people are going to do anything. So this is what Trump is doing. And Trump, he put this out on Truth, he ordered CENTCOM to open the gates of hell after U.S. troops launches strikes on Iran. So he is going all out. He's not waiting. He's not sitting back. And he's going to crush the will of the IRGC. Not just with weapons, but with money. Because money speaks. Everything's been blocked from them. They're getting no money from oil sales. They don't have the control of the Strait of Hormuz. They're about to lose the Strait of Hormuz. And Trump, he has full and utter control of the situation. I wouldn't be surprised in the very short period of time they actually surrender. But think about how Trump is going to approach this. You think as soon as they say, okay, we surrender, Trump is going to say, okay, let's make a deal? Or he's going to make them feel it. They're going to say, let's make a deal. He's going to say, sure, boom. They're going to say, please, let's make a deal. Eventually, they're going to say, we surrender. I do believe that's where all of this is headed, or close to a surrender. Trump, he let everyone know that we don't need the Strait of Hormuz. He says we have millions of barrels of oil and it's coming into Houston and Louisiana. It's coming from Venezuela. We control 62% of the world's oil market. What is the Strait important for? The pricing. That's it. It's created and controlled by the central bankers. This is what Trump is now removing. And Trump let us know that, yeah, we'll be making a deal, but not just yet. Iran is not ready. Election Wizard put this out and said, I call it a skirmish. We have a skirmish with Islamic Republic of Iran. They're getting hit so hard, they want to make a deal. But I say they are not ready to make a deal. They will be ready very soon. So what does he mean by that? He means that when their will is broken and they have nothing left, there's no money, there's nothing, and the deep state continually says, and the central bank says, keep fighting, and they say that we can't, we have nothing. We have no money coming in. We lost the Strait of Hormuz. We lost Karg Island. We're not making sales. We can't pay the soldiers. Remember, the central bank, the deep state players, they don't have an army. They use proxies, just like Iran uses Hezbollah, Hamas, Houthis. So the central bank uses Iran. That's their proxy army. And eventually, they're going to surrender. They're going to fold. But Trump is going to keep hitting them until they say they can't take it anymore. They're going to say, we give. We're done. That's it. You think they're going to get a deal like they got before? Absolutely not. Trump will have all the leverage. This is what you can accept. You don't want to accept it? Then I'm going to hit you again. Will you accept this? Oh, I'm going to hit you again. Will you accept this? Oh, I'm going to hit you again. That's what you're going to see over and over and over. And think about what he just did with Saudi Arabia, their arch enemy. He went ahead and he's saying that he would like to make a civil nuclear deal. Now, they're not going to enrich, but they're going to have nuclear energy. And this is what he put out. The civil nuclear deal, there'll be no enrichment of materials being made between the United States Department of Energy and Saudi Arabia, which pertains only to non-military use, such as the ones that Iran and UAE and others already have, will be approved, but is totally subject to Saudi Arabia joining the very respected and successful Abraham Accords. The United States is not opposed to civil, non-enriched nuclear facilities. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President DJT. So he's forcing Saudi Arabia to join the Abraham Accords. I do believe in the end, all the countries will join the Abraham Accords. And once they're all on board with the Abraham Accords, that's when you're going to see OPEC completely and utterly be dismantled. I mean, think about it. The UAE, they signed on to the Abraham Accords. And what did they do next? They withdrew from OPEC. Very, very interesting. I think we can see where all of this is going. And soon, Trump is going to have the entire oil system that the deep state central bankers set up. It's going to be decentralized. And yes, we're going to see oil drop like a rock. All those individuals, all those people believing that, oh, the Democrats are going to win because oil prices are high. Wait until you see what happens. Remember what happened the first time when oil price came down 50, 60, 70%? 70 cents? I should say cents. What do you think is going to happen when the oil is completely and utterly decentralized and Iran folds and the waterways are completely open? There's no more fear. Well, you're going to see oil prices drop dramatically. Now, again, the deep state, the central bankers, they're panicked about this because they understand what that means. They understand where Trump is headed. He's headed into removing the central bank system in this country. He's basically dismantling everything that they set up. Remember, these are all their control mechanisms that they set up across the globe. He is now dismantling them one by one. And if you think that, oh, we're not going to have to fight wars or we're not going to have to do certain things, we've been in a war from the very, very beginning. Do you really think the deep state, the central bankers are going to sit back and just say, hey, you know what? You want Iran, you want decentralized, just take it. You know what? Oh, wait, you're going to shut off our money? Go ahead. No, they're going to fight back every step of the way, especially when we win the midterms. They're going to push back very, very hard because what do they have to lose? They already lost the presidency. They already lost the House and the Senate. So what do you think they're going to do to try to get back into control? They're going to use whatever they have left to create events, to create riots. Yes, they will fight back. We're in a war. And they will try until the very end. But this is why Trump is getting leverage every step of the way. This is why he's forcing them into a corner, because he will have the leverage. It doesn't mean just because Trump has all the leverage, they're not going to try to fight back. It just means that Trump having the leverage can basically counter what they're trying to do and keep the people safe while they try to push these ridiculous things. So yeah, the deep state players, they're going to fight back. They're going to push back, not just in this country, but around the world. Now, what's very interesting is you could see the pushback in this country. Just look at the House and Senate. We don't have people that are loyal to America. We don't have people that follow the Constitution. Most of the people in the House and Senate, they're against America. Yeah, they took an oath, but again, that's not their religion. They don't really care. They lied. You see, criminals will tell you anything you want to know. They'll swear on anything. They don't care. Eric Doherty put this out and said, 4 House Republicans just blocked an amendment to the NDAA that would codify Donald Trump's executive order preventing mentally ill transgender people from serving in the U.S. military. The 4 are Representative Brian Fitzpatrick. He's from Pennsylvania. Kimberlyn King Hines from Marina Islands. Representative Mike Lawyer from New York. And Representative James Moylan from Guam. These are the people that push back. Why don't they want to keep the transgender people, mentally ill people out of the U.S. military? Because they've been trying to weaken the U.S. military every step of the way. And think about it. Like we said from the very, very beginning, the country was infiltrated a long time ago. Yes, there's still sleepers. Yes, there's still people in agencies that are just waiting for the right moment. And I do believe that Cash and Hegseth and Blanche and Radcliffe and now Polte, yes, they are cleaning house. But again, they employ a lot of people, and a lot of people stay quiet until the very last minute. James O'Keefe put this out and said, senior Pentagon director caught on hidden camera spills on gay date with O'Keefe that he will undo whatever been done at the Pentagon after Trump leaves office to reverse his agenda. I've seen some things in true D.C. nature. You don't always reveal everything in D.C. I have the influence. I can undo whatever's been done. I think Trump is a narcissist. Yeah, I think it's war in Iran completely stupid, but it's driven on one man's, President Trump, ego to me. In my own personal opinion, I mean, you, O'Keefe, could be a news reporter. So again, you think this is the only person? Absolutely not. I do believe there's probably many of them. But eventually what's going to happen, they'll be found out. And I think a lot of them are going to end up resigning when they realize that their power is no longer as powerful as it was before. Because after Trump, we're going to have another candidate. And then after that, we're going to have another candidate. So what they're waiting for is never going to come. You have to remember, Trump is shutting down their cheating system to win elections. So they're not going to win another election for a very long time. Acting Secretary of the Navy, Hung Chow, says, the Department of Navy takes the conduct shown in the video extremely seriously. Such statements and apparent intent to leverage a position to undermine the policies and direction set by our elected leaders are inappropriate and incompatible with the standards expected of department personnel. Effective immediately, this individual has been placed on administrative leave while we determine next steps to ensure accountability and protect the integrity of our mission. So we have to think about this very clearly. If this person was in there ready to reverse everything, if the sleepers, if they're still, I don't know how many there are, probably not that many, but if they're still sleepers and they are being activated when there's riots or events, or they're told to lie about certain things, maybe a cyber event, well, we're going to have to find them out because, again, this is infiltration from within. That's what we're seeing right now. Cynical Public says these people are not resisting Trump and Hegseth. They're resisting the constitutional will of the American electorate. They are traitors to their oath and should be treated with all the power that American law provides against traitors. And that's exactly true. They're completely against this. Remember, Trump was voted into power by the American people. This is the only elected position where the entire country votes. And the people said, this is who we want. To go against that, you are treasonous to this country. And again, you don't take an oath to a president. You take an oath to the Constitution. And that should tell you everything you need to know right there. They lied when they took the oath because it doesn't matter who's president. You always follow the Constitution. But you can see the D's, they're panicked over the midterms. They're very, very worried. And Schumer has convened Democrats to prepare for election doomsday scenarios. For 2 hours, away from cameras in a room just steps away from the Senate chamber, a group of powerful lawmakers rehearsed for some of their darkest fears about November's midterm elections. Disinformation triggering voter roll purges in key states before Election Day, National Guard troops deployed to polling places as voters cast their ballots, and the machinery of free elections seizing up in real timing. So basically, they're already trying to convince everyone that Trump is going to try to cheat. That's what Schumer actually pretty much said. He says we're preparing for Trump to cheat in the elections. See, this is what they do. They project what they do onto Trump. Trump doesn't want to cheat. He wants every citizen to come in with their ID. He wants to use paper ballots, and he wants to use one-day voting. So this way, there's no machines, there's no mail-ins, there's nothing. American citizens don't have to be afraid to vote. But what is Schumer actually really saying? He's saying that he wants his constituents to vote, which are the illegal people in this country. How do we know they want them to vote? Well, RNC Research put this out, and this is coming from California Democrat Ro Khanna. He says, we need to make sure ICE isn't at the polls. American elections are for American citizens. Why is Khanna trying to protect over 270,000 non-citizens who are registered to vote? Well, an American citizen doesn't have to worry about ICE. The only people that have to worry about ICE are those people illegally in this country. Clandestine says, there it is. Ro Khanna just said the quiet part out loud and revealed exactly what it is the Dems fear. They're terrified of Trump sending ICE to polling locations. Why? Because the Dems use illegals to cheat in elections. But think about it. Do we need ICE if they have to show voter ID? Do we need ICE if it's paper ballots and one-day voting? Most likely not, because, again, these individuals, they are not citizens of this country, so they won't be recorded as citizens. So even if they had an ID from, like, say, New York, in a federal election, it doesn't work because they're not a citizen of this country. So once again, Trump now is cracking down on this. Plus, he won the ruling for the United States Postal Service where they'll only deliver mail-ins to actual citizens of this country. So that shuts down their mail-in plan. So what is the deep state players doing right now? They're coming up with a different plan. I think this is why Trump waited for the last minute with the Save America Act. Because if he did this back in January of, let's say, 2026, or January or February, March, April of 2025, it would give the D's a very long period of time to come up with a plan to try to counter all of this. But if they believe the Save America Act will never be passed, and they believe they can still cheat, they're going to come up with some other plan, which is very, very interesting. So let's see how that all plays out. But I do believe Trump is sending the signal, letting everyone know that it's time. We'll be talking about that in just a sec. But first, it seems that a Secret Service agent has been leaking information. He's suspected of leaking information inside of J.D. Vance's Secret Service detail. And it seems that they decided to put this individual on leave right now until they do an investigation. But we'll have to see how that all plays out. But the Secret Service, and this is coming from the director of Secret Service, says, and this is Sean Curran, he is warning that the agency are receiving threats, and they're off the charts. He says the agency opens more than 10,000 investigations this year. A 40% spike, he says, has reached a level unseen in his 24 years on the job. Now, once again, why do you think that is? Well, because Trump is president. Think about it. They just renamed DJT, And all of a sudden, there was a bomb scare at DJT Airport. When it was the Palm Beach Airport, you never really heard anything about that. As soon as they renamed it, all of a sudden, there's some type of scare. That should tell you everything you need to know. And now we could see that Jack Smith, he was referred to the DOJ for lying to the House Judiciary. And House Judiciary Chairman Jim Jordan, he basically referred this information. So let's see how that plays out. But I'm sure President Trump is pretty darn happy. And how do we know he's happy? Because he put it out on Truth. He says, justice at last. House panel accuses Jack Smith of lying to Congress, urges DOJ to prosecute. Now, once again, we have to remember that the judiciary is completely utterly corrupt. Look at Comey. Everyone wanted him arrested. Yes, we all wanted him arrested. They wanted him to be accountable. And now he's postponed his entire trial until October. Was he arrested? No, he was set free. And the last set of charges, they were dismissed. So you have to remember, we're still dealing with a corrupt system. And it doesn't mean Jack Smith is going to be arrested, put in jail, tried, and then have the, throw away the keys. They will fight with lawfare. If he gets assigned a judge that is corrupt, most likely he will get off in regards to these charges. They'll find some type of technicality. This is why it's very, very important to win the House and the Senate. This is why we need to remove those corrupt judges, remove all the people that are on the take, and replace them with those judges that are going to follow the rule of law, that aren't blackmailed, that aren't on the take, that aren't taking the orders from the deep state players. That's how you have justice. And I do believe once you do that, that's when you have the leverage. Now, the other thing that's very interesting is that the House approved H.R. 7008, the Stop Insider Trading Act. And they voted 232 to 198. All Republicans supported it, joined by 13 Democrats. And most of the other Democrats, they said no way, something like 190-something Democrats. So that should tell you everything you need to know. And again, the Senate is not going to pass this. Voter ID was connected to this. And it looks like what's going on right now is that Speaker Johnson and the House, working with Trump, they're sending bill after bill after bill that has the Save America Act or voter ID or something like that. Brandon Gill says 90% of Americans agree that members of Congress should not be able to trade stocks, except for those people that are part of the criminal syndicate. 90% of Americans also agree that you should have to show an ID to vote. 198 Democrats voted against both. Boom, that should tell you everything you need to know. But this is why Schumer is so afraid of the midterms. Because you have to remember, going back in time, Obama let the illegals know that it's okay to vote, that nobody can stop you. Take a listen.
And you show up at your polling place, they can't stop you from voting. They can't stop you from voting. If people want to know how to vote, then you can go to iwillvote.com. The fact of the matter is that we give our power away all the time. We tell ourselves, oh, it's hard, it's not going to matter, it's not going to count. And the powers that be, they're counting on us giving our power away.
Many of the millennials, dreamers, undocumented citizens, and I call them citizens because they contribute to this country, are fearful of voting. So if I vote, will immigration know where I live? Will they come for my family and deport us?
Not true.
Okay.
And the reason is, first of all, when you vote, you are a citizen yourself, and there is not a situation where the voting rolls somehow are transferred over and people start investigating, etc. The sanctity of the vote is strictly confidential in terms of who you voted for. If you have a family member who maybe is undocumented, then you have an even greater reason to vote.
So President Obama, and clandestine put this out, openly encouraged illegals to vote in the 2016 election and assured them that ICE and federal law enforcement will not seek them out or deport them if they vote. And this was 4 days before the 2016 election. So didn't they do this with the borders too? They told all the illegals you can come in, nobody's going to stop you. Actually, if you looked at the border agents, they just stood by while the NGOs brought in all the illegals. They did the same thing with the voting polls. Don't worry, No law enforcement's going to be there. You don't have to be afraid. So basically, he told everyone it was okay. Now, everything's changed. They're not in control. They're panicking over this. So think about this. This is what they did. This is how they used them. And then you had those people inside D.C. to cover up the manipulation, the rigged election. They covered up what was coming from foreign countries. They covered up what was going on in this country. So no one would know what was really going on. Hans put this out and said, this whole Nikki Flores scandal is so completely beyond the pale, not just because of what she did, but maybe even more because not one single corporate media outlet other than the New York Post has done a single report on it. You can search it yourself. There's nothing there. So here we have the chief of the intelligence division of the FBI's Washington field office, a former deputy assistant director of counterintelligence, and the FBI's election security lead for the 2020 presidential election. We have her not only shutting down the Hunter Biden investigation by falsely claiming that Ukrainian whistleblower Andrei Telezenko was a Russian agent, but also admitting that she was running a shadow government, meaning a government operating outside the authority of the one led by Trump, the actual president. And the media is completely silent. That alone should disqualify them from any expectation of trust, access, or credibility when it comes to interviews, interactions with the Trump administration, or any role as an independent check on power. They have demonstrated that they have not been acting as the media in any normal sense of the word, but rather as an institution protecting false narratives and suppressing information that the public has a right to know. Well, let's take this a step further. The media has been protecting the criminal syndicate. The media is part of the grand conspiracy. That's why they don't report on things. That's why they didn't want to report on what Trump was saying about the elections, because they were part of it. They're covering it up. The cover-up always gets you in the end. And it will. And every step of the way, you can see the deep state players, they're panicking right now because Trump is pushing very hard to get the Save America Act passed. So Speaker Johnson, he has confirmed the Save America Act provisions will only need 50 votes plus J.D. Vance in the Senate after reconciliation package is sent over. That unlocks our third reconciliation bill, which is Republicans' best shot to get as much of the Save America Act into law as possible. So that is going to be very, very interesting. So J.D. Vance would be the tiebreaker. Remember when Trump put out that video showing that one of the representatives traveled like 80 miles when he was sick to be the tiebreaker? Is J.D. Vance going to have to travel all the way back and break the tie, or is there going to be someone else? But I don't think he would have put that up just for no reason. So you could see Trump and team, they're pushing very, very hard. And it looks like Trump just sent the signal now. He's actually saying, I'm losing my patience with Thune, and we need to get this passed, which I think that is, he's telling everyone now is the time. We're at the end, pretty much the end of July right now, going into August. We know Congress takes off August. Maybe they won't this time. Maybe they'll stay there, be forced to stay there. And this is why Trump is not signing the bills, because if they leave, well, they don't get the bills. So any bill that comes to him, he's not going to sign, which means they have 10 days to stay in session. So this is going to be very, very interesting. Let's see how that plays out. But I think he sent the signal saying it is now time. And all these bills are hitting at once. Nick Sorter put this out and said, Trump indicates he is losing his patience with John Thune over not passing the Save America Act. We can't do this, and we're not going to take this any longer. I'm trying to be nice, trying to be really nice, but we're not going to be able to take it much longer when they can't get past voter ID, proof of citizenship, and no mail-in ballots, because they're crooked as hell. The Senate, what they're doing is just not right. The Senate is a place that you send things when you want it to die. And then he tells everyone to call Thune, 202-224-2321. He says, everyone call John Thune at the Senate. So let's see, he's putting a lot of pressure on Thune. He has all these bills coming up. Thune is going to say, listen, I have no choice. Remember, he's part of the Rhino organization. I get it. I think they're playing this out saying, listen, I have all of this happening right now, and I am forced to do this because the American people want it. The polls show it. And Every bill that comes to us has it. I have no choice. And I think he's going to be talking to his handler saying, we have to do it. And I do believe it will be done. And Joe Lane says, this is very, very interesting. Trump, he put this out on Truth, and it's coming from the Federal Bureau of Investigation. And it's declassified document of the stolen election in 2020. It's a declassified FBI document of a 2020 investigation into fraudulent voter registration in Michigan. Why was it classified? Why no arrest? Michigan law enforcement had determined that it wasn't a grand conspiracy to steal the election, but was instead a money-making scam to get paid for every new registration submitted. These fraudulent registrations had fake addresses and phone numbers, mismatched signatures, and many were filled out using the same writing style. They were easily flagged as fraudulent, but who submitted them? It was a company named GBI Strategies. Guess who they are directly connected to? GBI Strategies was a for-profit, Tennessee-based voter registration, Get Out the Vote organization founded in 2013 by Gary Gossett Bell. The firm specialized in canvassing and voter registration for Democrat-aligned campaigns and committees, receiving millions in dollars in funding from entities such as Democratic National Committee, the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee, and the 2020 Joe Biden presidential campaign. It was a for-profit company being paid by the Democrats to register voters, and they were getting paid for the number of registrations submitted. Nobody was making sure the registrations were valid. They were instructing workers to fill out registrations themselves. The more registrations, the more fake ballots they can produce to steal the elections. It reminds me of COVID. Listen, just say everyone has COVID. It doesn't matter if they have a heart attack, killed in a car accident, motorcycle accident. Just say they have COVID, you get paid. So what do you think they're going to do? They're going to register, make up registrations, and they're going to say everyone died from COVID. This was a Tennessee company. How many other states were they operating in? They caught only some of the fraudulent registrations. Don't miss this important fact. These fraudulent registrations were caught by honest election officials in Muskegon County. That's not Detroit. How many fraudulent registrations were submitted and accepted in Detroit? I'm willing to bet that it was a lot. That's why every single blue state has at least one big city that completely controls statewide elections because of fraud. I witnessed that firsthand in Seattle. For more examples, Detroit and Michigan, LA and California, Chicago and Illinois, New York City and New York, etc. Clean up the voter registration rolls in these big Democratic cities, and the Democrats will lose almost everywhere. Someone in the upper echelons of the FBI shut down the investigation when the FBI agents started looking into Detroit. They narrowed the investigation to exclude election fraud and shut down the case after FBI analysis found this out. In one analysis, 107 voters' registration forms, investigators conducted a database search to identify applications with potentially fraudulent information. The search revealed that 91 of the 107 individuals were not found in the database. Among the 16 remaining individuals confirmed to be existing people, only 4 had signatures that matched the voter registration application. How could the FBI possibly shut down an investigation and not even consider a conspiracy of election fraud when 91 out of 107 ample registrations are from people who don't even exist? Whoever made these decisions to prevent an FBI investigation in Detroit is in the crosshairs. It is likely Nikki Flores, who was a senior FBI counterintelligence official and helped oversee election security in 2020 as the lead of the Bureau's Foreign Interference Task Force. She withheld the information that China obtained over 200 million voter registrations and was shipping fake driver's licenses into the country. I believe she also withheld the information from Christopher Wray. Nikki Flores bragged to her cohorts about controlling information and running a shadow government. So basically, with FBI 1.0, they're part of the criminal syndicate, and they assisted in overthrowing the United States government. And this is the information that Trump is bringing out. This is the information where he's putting a lot of pressure on the Senate. And anyone that doesn't vote for this, they're screwed the next time around. They will never, ever win. Remember, Trump will force all of this. And let's say the Save America Act isn't passed. He still can use the executive order because he's showing that there is a national security threat. Add on top of that, the investigations in Fulton County, the investigations in Maricopa, the investigation in California. Do you think he'll have enough ammunition to say, listen, we have a national security problem with elections right now, And it looks like there were certain individuals working with foreign governments to basically overthrow the United States government, and they manipulated the elections. And it looks like the foreign governments are going to be doing this again. So at this point in time, since we can't secure everything with the machines and things like that, we don't have that much time. What we need to do is we need to have voter ID, one-day voting, paper ballots. You think he's going to make the case? Absolutely. What is going to happen with the Ds? Well, if you have voter ID, it's going to make it very, very difficult for them to go to the voting centers. So if they can't push their illegals to the voting centers, what will they try? Will they try to stop people from going to the voting centers, especially in the big cities? I do believe so. Because again, this is all they have left. Plus, after the elections, will there be lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit? Now remember, when they have these lawsuits, who's on their side? The judges. Can the judges delay? Can they place injunctions? Can they stop certain things? Yeah, they could try. How long they can delay it? Well, that's a huge question. But look what they did with the illegals. Look what they did with Trump's executive orders. What do you think they're going to do after the elections? You're going to have the same corrupt judges as the lawsuits hit, and there's not just going to be one or two. There's going to be many. They're going to use lawfare, and they're going to try to delay the elections. Now, in the end, this is not going to work. So what will they try after that? Will they try riots? Will they get the people all riled up in this country saying Trump cheated? Absolutely. So that is what we can expect. But I do believe Trump, he knows this. This is why he's been cleaning up all the illegals. This is why he went after the worst of the worst. Now that he got the ruling from the Fifth and Second Circuit, where the illegals can't roam freely, this causes another problem for the Ds. So every step of the way, Trump is mitigating those people that could do us harm, because he knows in the end, most likely he'll have to use the military to go after the remaining people in this country, especially Antifa. But he's prepared and ready for this. Remember, I do believe that he's pushing the deep state players down this path because he knows the playbook. He knows that he can control the situation. He got everything in place. And in the end, they're all going to lose. And the people are going to see who the treasonous people are to this country. He began the narrative. More information is going to be coming out, and it's going to get worse and worse for the deep state players. Why? Because the Patriots are in control. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.